Thank you for the opportunity to talk about my work with Syrians who fled war. First, I am introduced. I like to say a little bit to me. I started to set up my In Contact Gestalt Institute in 2015. At that time, the refugee crisis was a big issue. Many years earlier, in the 90s, I met Bernie Glassman when I was in training to become a Gestalt therapist. So since then, both Gestalt and Zen peacemakers have accompanied my life. I remember when in 2011, Bernie Glassman stayed in Berlin at my home, how hopeful he was talking about the uprisings in the Arabic countries. As we know, things went wrong. Now, in my presentation, I would like to tell you, on the one hand, a little bit about Gestalt therapy in the first step, and then I would like to talk about my projects I created, started, and worked out with the Syrians. So first, Gestalt. Why Gestalt for this work? Gestalt therapy uniquely examines contact processes with regard to disturbances in the organism environment field that hinder lively self-development and thus soul growth. Health self-regulation is restored so that psychologically suffering and dysfunctional social behavior can be overcome. We look at and work on cognitive, emotional, and physical processes in their interaction. The joint work of clients and therapists or counselors examines the embeddedness of the individual in his or her social world and the interaction between the individual and the world with regard to promoting and inhibiting environmental factors and the individual's possibilities to influence them. We regard the creative adaptation to the environment as an active process that brings the individual needs, situation into the best possible relationship with the social circumstances. Therapeutic interventions aim at establishing a creative field in which it is possible for the client to engage in new thoughts and possibilities of action. The dialogical, appreciative attitude, interventions that improve self-perception, offers of experimentation with new action or possibilities, work on emotional dynamics in the form of dialogical exposure, play a supporting role. The training is a high self-awareness component which creates a creative learning field in the group that lays the groundwork for working on one's own issues as well as for an understanding of group dynamic processes. We adapt methods and interventions to the needs and topics of the participants. So this is a short summary of Gestalt. And I must say, I have to read from my paper because my English is not so fluently that I can speak just free. So sorry for this, I try my best. Gestalt is a very creative kind of work, and it's about contact. And this is what is very important in the work with the Syrians. I started from nothing, And this is where I start now to read a little bit the text I have prepared. Because I didn't have money, I didn't have, I didn't work in a dormitory for refugees. I have a private practice. And in this private practice, no refugee would come because nobody knows it. So I had to go and to find ways, how could I meet people? So in the following, I will tell you about some of the major projects that I have realized and that are in the pipeline. I will end the presentation with a few pictures that will give you an impression of the working atmosphere before we get into the discussion together. So I will start in 2015, where my story begins. Touched by all the pictures about the tragedy of war in Syria, the terrible situation of refugees who took dangerous ways to find safe places, made me think of what I could do to help a little bit. I lived in this crazy situation where I would not get in contact with refugees, even if they would live in the same street. There is no reason to meet. Even if I wanted, I would not ask someone in the street, are you a refugee? In which language should I ask? I realized this separatedness. Most of the people are living in this separatedness, not seeing the other, with no real contact to this other, but a lot of projections. This was my bearing witness to separateness. For me, starting with not knowing meant being open and letting go of ideas about the refugees and how to realize projects. Bearing witness, as I understood, is deep listening to the beauty and the suffering in the world. Loving action starts from this place. And that's where I started. First of all, I wanted to come in contact with women and listen to their life experiences and needs. And this means deep listening, bearing witness. Out of this, I wanted to offer something as a professional Gestalt and trauma therapist. My idea was to create a safe space where women could share their stories, support each other, and find a way to stabilize psychologically and in their everyday life affairs. So they would become powerful enough to help others outside the circle. But how to find a woman for translation? I don't speak Arabic and I could not pay for a professional interpreter. I asked a neighbor from Lebanon who lives in Berlin since long if he knows a woman who probably is interested to translate for such a project for free. After some weeks, a young woman called me and we met to get to know each other. Arva was at that time a young artist of 23. She had finished her Bachelor of Art in Damascus and lived in Berlin since 1.5 years. Her life was, her life situation was very difficult, but she wanted to support women and help to realize the idea of a circle of peace. So next question was how to find women for the project. Sending my offerings to institutions and dormitories for refugees, nearly no answers came. Arva was sharing the idea with all people she knew in Berlin, in her language school, through Facebook. This was the best way. It was soon very clear that there is a lot of mistrust and fear of German therapists, and especially to discuss their own problems with others in a group. We started with one-to-one sessions. Sometimes women were accompanied by a cousin or a social worker. During the first half year, we had a lot of one-to-one sessions. At the same time, we started with group meetings every 2 weeks. I remember a 17-year-old girl, she came with her cousin who wanted to check if I'm okay. She was a shy woman. She lived in a dormitory for refugees with her mother and 3 of her brothers and sisters. Her father and older brother were killed. She loved painting, and it was very helpful that Arva was close to her age. We started to create a familiar atmosphere. Drinking tea, painting, talking, laughing. During the first half year, some women came and left. We started different activities. For example, we met with German girls because Rahav, the 17-year-old woman, wanted to know what they think about the refugees, especially women wearing headscarf. I invited the woman to my home, and they cooked together an Arabic dinner. We visited Rahav in her dormitory during Ramadan. Her mother invited us to a dinner, so we gradually developed trust. Then the group stabilized, and about 6 to 10 women joined regularly our meanwhile weekly meetings. A lot of themes came up, a lot of shared stories, a lot of suffering, but a lot of laughing as well. All the way from Syria, these women were caring of someone, kids, relatives, friends, others. Deep listening leads to loving action. As one woman said, these meetings are like cooking. We all came hungry and leave well nourished. It was our kitchen. We all agreed this was how it worked. After the first year, the women wanted to spread the idea of the circle of peace out in their community. They wanted to show that it is helpful to talk with others and listen in a deep way. This makes a difference. So we organized an event, and all women invited friends and family. Some of their friends played music. Arva and another artist showed their new paintings. This was very important for Arva. It was her first exhibition since finishing her university. For the other woman, this helped her to transform her frozen state after the traumatic escape and become resonant again. For all, it was a process of reorganizing their creativity. The group made a significant contribution to this. During this event, men asked for a circle of peace for men. They felt their need of healing their wounds. My limits became very clear to me. Both my time and financial resources were very limited. There was very little finance support from official institutions. So my considerations were to train facilitators for this group work, or generally dialogue-based transformative healing work, which is Gestalt. For me, Gestalt is very helpful in this field. So this meant for the Circle of Peace of Arab Women that I wanted to gradually hand over my leadership to others. While Arba was responsible for translation and coordination in the group, Rawa, an experienced counselor with a lot of life experience, played the role of the elderly, whose advice the woman liked to listen to. I wanted to encourage them to take more and more responsibility for the group. After 2 years, I gave them responsibility for the group and resigned from leadership. My practice room, was furthermore the place for their meetings and the place of trust. And I were present in the background and continued to be in contact with both of them. Meanwhile, Rawa has 3 groups of Circle of Peace running, and she's doing this online since 2020 when Corona happened. And the women are from a lot of countries. They are Syrians who fled to Sweden or Algeria or Dubai, or even women from Syria join her groups. So she has 3 groups running. At that time, I offered Arba and Rawa to join in a Gestalt basic training of 5 workshops together with German participants. During this basic training, which also teaches essential Gestalt theory, Rawa explained that she considers this knowledge to be very important for the Syrian community. This was the starting point to develop together with her a 1-year training, Gestalt training for Syrians. The title was Shaping Change Through Dialogue with Responsibility for a Common Future. The program consisted of 8 consecutive workshops. I would like to give you a bit an idea of the project and which kind of methods we worked with. The workshop program provides participants with a framework for learning and development processes that enables them to deal responsibly with personal and social challenges and appropriately with conflicts. In addition, strategies for the development and implementation of own project ideas should be communicated and accompanied. The analysis of the previous experiences in the Circle of Peace showed that the further training should address both women and men to deal directly with issues related to gender relations and conflicts in this context. An understanding of inner psychological as well as interpersonal and social dynamics should be conveyed. Both internal and external areas of conflict should be investigated and dealt with. I wanted to work out experience-oriented methods of self-management and dealing with conflicts, and thereby tie in with inner values and work out their motivating power. Based on this, the participants were to develop personal goals and projects and strategies for the implementation. The duration of the training should be at least 1 year, so that the group could experience a group dynamic process that promotes inner growth and thus contributes the personality development. In the progression of the training, mutual support should be built up and inner stabilization mechanisms should be developed. Here, too, it made sense to plan a 1-year duration. The preconditions for the participation were enough thematic interest and the willingness to commit oneself to a common learning process. So, methods. Some words to the methods. The importance of building trust. The years of experience with the woman of the Circle of Peace and some interested men led to the group being composed of people who already knew each other from different contexts. This was very important and helpful for this first training group. They knew each other from yoga, choir, theater project, or they were family, like the two sons of Rawa or the brother of Awa. They knew each other from Syria. They had studied together, for example, or they have lived in the same city in Syria. In this way, the group had something familiar. And from the beginning, there was a great interest in the various experiences and processes. The importance to activate internal resources. Often the refugees experience that what they learned earlier does not fit into their life, their new life, is not needed, and that they do not get far with it. Begun with the language, school knowledge, degrees, or behaviors. In addition, there are experiences that are painful or shameful, so that splitting off, concealing, and forgetting the past appears to be the safest way to make progress in the new life. This means that access to important inner resources is lost. The process of repressing also binds energy, which is then missing elsewhere. Depression is often the result. By connecting the positive past experiences and by making aware and verbalizing one's own coping strategies in stressful, threatening situations, confidence in one's own abilities and strengths is restored. They appreciate the way they have taken to Germany. Here they can integrate something new more easily if the old does not have to be extinguished. Re-establishing a bond connecting past and future, individual and community. Past and future seem to be lost. This creates feelings of disorientation and senselessness and leads to depression for some and destructive aggression for others. We can observe both to a high degree in refugee communities. This is counteracted by a narrative in which one finds oneself as an active person and by listeners who witness one's story. Telling one's own story from the perspective of one's own strengths, beginning in a time before war, when the world was still quite okay, the war as the essential traumatic event, the conscious decision to go, coping with the flight and arriving in safe Germany with ideas and dreams that were often disappointed and only gradually change into realistic perspectives, helps to overcome the cracks and ruptures and to connect past and future. Presence and witnessing are other elements necessary to not feel isolated and lost. A welcoming resonance of the listeners who witness the story in a certain way integrates the speaker into the group and thus back into a community. 4. Reframing the self-image of being a victim. The experience of having become the victim of overpowering circumstances often leads to a one-sided self-perception in which weakness and helplessness are in the foreground. Focusing on one's own activity and strengths helps to correct one's self-image. Yes, this was a short summary of ideas of this first training program we started. All these experiences led to further development. Not only did the Syrians learn a lot in our training sessions, I also had very important and rich experiences that helped me to understand dynamics and problems and to integrate them into my training program. After 2-year training courses, Rauer and Arva started the regular 4-year Gestalt training in German with the Germans in 2019. Arva finished her training last October. Rauer will do it a little bit later. A third woman started to participate in the next group for 4-year training. While it was an important learning for them together with the Germans, I became aware that there are specific themes related to the Syrian society, to flight, and being a migrant or refugee that need a specific frame to work on it. The workshops I did with only Syrians had a very familiar atmosphere, and it seemed important to me to continue this work. So Rauer and I started together with Alexander in 2002, a 1-year training on flight and identity for counseling. Alexander has studied Islamic science and speaks Arabic and has finished the 4-year Gestalt training some years before. 12 men and women participated in the training, where we worked on 9 workshops on a lot of very sensitive themes. Next year, Rauer and Alexander will be carrying out the training on their own without me in charge. I will support both of them in the background with supervision. Moving forward in the process leads to further development. My aim is to build up a well-trained community of Syrian Gestalt therapists and counselors who will work in various social areas where people are suffering from emotional distress and social problems. Therefore, I decided to offer the first 4-year Gestalt training for Syrian psychologists and social workers. 2 pre-workshops have already taken place. Start will be next May. The training will focus on flight, migration, and trauma. I will cooperate in this special class with Dr. Muta Barakat from Syria. He is psychologist and Gestalt therapist, trauma therapist, and with his wife, Lydia Chilewska Barakat. Both speak Arabic. They live in Poland, not so far from Berlin. Financial situation for all this is always a question. So Rauer and I volunteered a lot of hours, which was worthwhile for us in that it was a valuable experience for everyone. This will not be possible for a more extensive and longer-term training program involving other trainers. For this reason, in the last Flight and Identity training session, I suggested founding an association that could apply for state and other fundings. The association is currently being set up and can form the basis for further social projects. The name of the association is Uns e.V. Uns is on the one hand a German word, we have uns, and it's an Arabic word. also e.V., Association for the Promotion of Psychological Education and Counseling for Migrants. The Arabic word al-uns means the joy we feel in the company of our fellow human beings. This was a very, for me, touching meaning and a nice name of this organization. To support the work and the start of this extensive training program, I have set up a private donation account with PayPal. So this was the idea, just to do a little support or invite friends and colleagues to support our project for the beginning. We need a little bit more support from state, I think, later on, because it's not so easy for Syrians to pay normal training costs. So we always work with very low costs, but without, it's difficult. So now I have some pictures, some photographs I like to share with you from our workshops, just to give an impression. And then we can start with questions and discussion. And I'm interested in your reflections or questions, whatever come. So now we have to find, Chloe, you have to help me, I think, with a PowerPoint, or can I do it? I cannot hear you, but
you can do it.
I can do it. Okay. Yeah. So, okay, here we are. So the first picture we see here is me some years ago with Arva. This was the beginning. I hope you can see.
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so we two started. And the next. This is a small impression of some of the women of the Circle of Peace we met in my practice. And you see, they're very happy to meet and they love to photograph. This was our summer event when the women decided to invite friends and family to come together and to share their experiences. There were musicians, and the woman, each of the women wanted to tell their friends and family what has changed since they participate in the Circle of Peace. And this was very, very touching. Some of the pictures of the exhibition, which were really, very interesting pictures. The training, the first training, Shaping Change Through Dialogue. You see, there is a lot of dialoguing. There is talking, sharing. In the background you see on the wall, there are some pictures. We are always painting, doing creative work. Men and women discuss issues they have, and a lot of things. Working out, each of them alone on questions. At the end, we had, we worked on projects. Each of them had to write down and think of a project in their life they will work on. And this was, for example, to bring a girlfriend from Syria to Germany. Not easy, but it worked. Raua had her project was really to start the Gestalt therapy training. She did. Some one man had the idea to do a bodywork program for Syrians, and so on and so on. They had ideas, and we supported this to bring it alive. This is some year later, 2020. We had a small series of workshops, but it was in Corona time, and it was not easy. So everyone had to wear these masks. Yes. Again, creative work, discussion, sharing. And the training Flight and Identity, we had, on the one hand, themes sharing self-exploration and experiences and theory. So you see there are also paintings on the wall. Discussion in the garden, sitting outside. And at the end, we had a small film event, because the woman in the pictures, she's a filmmaker from Syria. She showed a film which shows the beginning of, was made in the beginning of the war and before she fled. And the musician who participated in the training, he plays Ud, he's musician. And I will finish with little music. I hope you can hear it.
Yes, we can.
I'm sorry. Yes, that's it. Yeah, so that is it. It's a small presentation. It's a small impression of this kind of work I did. So I'm
Can
ready.
you, sorry, Gabriele, can
Yeah.
you X out of the PowerPoint? Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So if you are interested in question or perhaps you have feedback or whatever, I'm interested in you.
We have a one note in the chat I could go ahead and read here. Thank you for your talk. Can you say anything more and how healing can occur from the split from the past because of flight trauma?
I read it. I have to read it. It's easier for me. Yeah. So in my experience, first, it's really important to find a way to trust each other, to come, yeah, to open up. So this is not easy. We have to overcome all these circumstances that hinders us to open up. So this is the first work to do, and then I think it depends on people are different, and the traumas are very different. So and when people start speaking about experiences, we have to be careful, because it's not just about talking about all the bad things, but it's also to check, is the person able to regulate stress? Can she regulate, for example, fears or being nervous or whatever. So we have to work a little bit on this. So for example, in the beginning of Circle of Peace, I felt that working with painting was quite helpful, because it's a kind of expression, and it's not, you have not to talk about everything, and you can look in a little thing. For example, one woman had painted a lot of flowers, so it seems not so dangerous to paint flowers, but it was about home, and it was about lost home. So step by step, we found words, and she could on the one hand talk about her as losing her home, but on the other hand, slowly she felt home in the practice room and with the group. So we were building a kind of home place. So yes, it's important to speak, and it's important to get resonance from the others, to get a hug, to get the reaction of I understand, or I see you, and I'm here. You are not alone. You are not lost.
Thank you, Gabriele. We have a question from Anthony. Would you like to say what your question is, Anthony?
Sure. Thank you so much for talking with us today, and thank you very much for the wonderful work you're doing. Obviously very important and impactful work, so thank you. I'm curious, you spoke a little bit to the first challenge of overcoming translation issues and the language barrier. You mentioned a little bit of some of the cultural resistance to seeking help, which is something I understand to be common. Were there any other cultural barriers that you had to navigate or that you ran into when first starting the group that were part of getting this launched?
So for me, it was clear I'm a woman, and I had no contact, or I've never traveled to Arabic countries. So I had to look what is possible for me, and it was easier for me to start with women. So, but at the same time, I experienced that they were very shy to open up to the Germans. So the women in the group who stayed, they were the most open ones. They were very interested to get to know each other, or they were more middle class women. Sometimes we had. I remember a group of women. They came. I think it was. They were 5 from a dormitory for refugees, and they were more religious women. They had a lot of sufferings, and they had the expectation they come talk about what they need, and we give it. But that was not how we could work, and that's not the way it works. So we couldn't help everyone. And this is what I have limits, and I can only do something respecting my limits. And so the idea was, if I work with those who are not so afraid of the Western lifestyle, or perhaps interested in Western lifestyle, they could build bridges to the others. And I think what is really difficult is if there are people who are very, very religious. There were some, and all of them came from different religious groups. Yeah, there are some different, and but if they are too shy, it's not possible. It has limits. But for example, for Rahab, it was so, she came with her headscarf, and at the end of, I think 2 years later, 3, she put it off because she had a process with the group, with a woman, where she realized she don't need it. It's not that she need the headscarf here. And she started to find a new identity, which was true for her. So, yeah, I mean, there are lots of stories. Yeah, cultural background. The cultural background it's more the middle class society in Syria who has perhaps studied or Abitur, who has learned, it's easier to contact them than people from the countryside or from more, religious group. Mm.
Thank you. Thank you, Anthony, for your question. Next, I believe Kiva has a question.
I do. Forgive me for not showing my face. I have the flu. I don't want to scare anyone.
Mm-hmm.
But it was an excellent presentation, and Circle of Peace is a great identifier for the work that you do. And given all that's happening today in the area of
In the Middle East?
Well, yeah, it's finding hard to, do I call it Israel or do I call it Palestine? So I'm actually probably, I should say Canaan, so I don't hurt anyone's feelings. But, I studied Arabic when I was younger, and now I'm going to start again. I'm an elder now, but I'm going to start again because I'm seeing so many children, and as an American, I must say, I'm not interested in specifically working with refugees and assimilating them into this culture, because it sometimes seems that what we do is we kind of neglect the impact on long-term residents. I'm dealing with that a lot here in homelessness and displacement of people who have been in communities for generations. I'm more or less interested in working with people in place. And so when the time is right, so I'm studying Arabic now. And I was just wondering if you have any advice, because I really feel like there needs to be a lot of work with the children, because there's just so much hurt and pain there. And how can this maybe be the work that you do? Can we think of in terms of, getting prepared when the time is right to be able to help the people of Canaan in that, in that region? Thank you.
Yeah. So I thought it was my idea to train people so that they can train others or work with others. And for example, Ava was one who thought she would maybe, if the situation in Syria changes, maybe she would start work in Damascus or somewhere, because there is not a lot of suffering, and the Syrians are connected with the friends and people in Syria. So there is always an exchange. Or for example, Rawa, who is doing this Circle of Peace online now, she has, I think she has a woman in Idlib, she has a woman in Damascus and somewhere else, or two women in Damascus, they met lately. So there is a transfer to this area as well. It's not so, it's not the big thing, it's just a little. But I'm a little hopeful that people who are trained and supported and who have experiences here can transport it to other places. That is my hope.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kiba, for your question. And next we have Kim.
Yeah, hi, Gabriele. Thank you for your talk and your work. I have a couple of questions. I've been working with refugees for about 20 years from all different places, and have also had refugees from different places living in my family as well. So it's been a profession, but also I've been a host mother to young unaccompanied minors for the last 13 years. And one of the things I think is really important, you mentioned working particularly with women who maybe are middle class and more open, more highly educated, because I think what's really important are the possible ramifications of how people change, and especially women can often adapt more quickly and often, you know, do better in educational settings perhaps than their husbands. They sometimes have less pressure to get a job. They may find things more easy. There's more contacts with schools, but sometimes the ramifications of them, you know, taking off their headscarves can be really big in their own settings. And particularly if this work is transferred to people with lower education. So I'm wondering how, if you've thought about that in terms of, you know, how to maybe create buffers or how to speak to women about such things. And the other thing is, of course, in my work with a lot of refugees, their background and their religious background is quite strong. So already in terms of the healing frameworks, they include elements of religion. So is that taken into account in terms of the Gestalt work? Because they have other resources that they can call upon, which a lot of secular Western people don't have.
I mean, the people, I don't, it's okay for me if people are religious. I don't confront this. I mean, this is their freedom to believe whatever they believe. And if they feel it's not helpful for them, or it's not really, it's not it's not, they change, they will, I mean, they will change and they put the headscarf off or do other things. So they try things, and some, for example, we had in the Circle of Peace and in the training, I had a mother and daughter. The mother very religious. The daughter said, leave me alone with your Islam. I don't want this. So, but in Islam, she had to. So mother gave a lot of pressure on her. She didn't want, a lot of stress. When I had a single or a session one by one with these two, and we were talking about these issues. The mother learned during this groups and our one-by-one sessions that if she makes pressure on her daughter, she will lose her. So she learned, she let her go, do her life how she liked to do. But as mother, she still is believing in whatever she believed before. So, and this is fine. And there we had a lot of, you know, it's so important that everyone is allowed to be what or do what they think is important to them. On the other hand, support a little bit if there is a conflict. And I try to support it, to support and contain those conflicts. We didn't split this conflict and say, oh, not here, we are peaceful. No, we invite the conflict so that it can be worked out and contained in a contained way. So there were a lot of situations where we had those difficulties, but it worked. And
I think my concern is just that we sometimes come with our ways of doing training and we want to do empowerment courses for women, and sometimes it can cause huge family issues which we haven't anticipated, and which I think often can even lead to honor problems, honor violence. And I'm just wondering if you thought about that in advance, because I think
absolutely. That's why I'm a very good listener, because then I see what is there and I can find and adapt my program to what is there. A little example, in one of the training, I had a man who were imprisoned and tortured, and he witnessed the killing of a lot of others who were imprisoned like him. So I don't know how he escaped. When he escaped and went back to his family said he shouldn't speak about this. He should be quiet because it brings him in danger. So he fled, came to Germany. In the group, when he spoke about his experience in prison, it was really very silent. At the same time, this young woman from where I told, who was with her mother, said, oh, I had an experience, a very bad experience as well. My father, who is a military, hit me and he was not nice with me. And I realized it could be dangerous for this young man that there is a woman in the group whose father is a military. So I had to think of how can we deal with this? And we find a way.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gabriele, for your contribution. I would say to really a humanitarian process and of mutual influence, I believe, between you and your client. I would like, and also I have appreciation of approaching this process from so many different angles, like you mentioned, cultural aspects. I would like to ask you, is trauma your focus? Do you mainly have clients or the groups that really prioritize traumatic states?
Not really. I'm trained as trauma therapist as well, but it's good to have this in background, as a background. But in the foreground, it's about life and it's about daily life and it's about the daily problems people have. So, and sometimes there is a traumatic situation we work on, but the most important thing is to feel part of a community, to feel a bit stable, to get ground. And if there is, if it's necessary to work a bit more intense on trauma, I invite people for single work, also for one-to-one work. Then it's not enough in the group. It's not, yeah, it needs a bit more. So sometimes I'm working with people in the group and inviting to see me alone. Mm-hmm.